You got to think that relationships are much high, like fast paced than ours right now. You know, we can date for fucking 5 years, 6 years, and not even get married. That's how that's how lame our generation is. You know, but you got to think back then when my mom, like my dad is courting my mom, that he's not going to court for that long. You know what I mean? They're probably going to stay in separate places. So it's like you have enough time by the time you get married to fully know this person and their triggers, you know?
Well, actually, for our grandparents, the reason why their marriages, and I'm very sure you know this, marriages were far more successful in our grandparents' time. People got married far more often, and they even got
Far
buried
much
together.
quicker.
Um, Going back to our grandparents' era, no, and the reason for that is because, are you familiar with the term "going steady"?
Hmm.
All right, so what that means is, back in our grandparents' days, they weren't, physically involved with everybody. They saw different people. These were suitors. Our grandmothers would be courted by, this man, that man, and that man, but they didn't sleep with that man, that man, and that man. They just went on dates with that man, that man, and that man. Those men more than likely didn't know about the other men, otherwise it would turn them off. But once the woman decided this is the husband of mine, they'd spend time with each other. This is that whole courting process. And then this is where going steady comes from, because they're going on numerous dates over and over and over and over. They're
Hmm.
seeing if they want to be with each other. And then they were with each other. They didn't move into houses until they got married.
They didn't move into houses until they got married. We have this habit of cohabiting with people when we're not even engaged to them, you know?
Right.
We
So
live
I
with
would
our
say
boyfriends, you know?
Right. So I would say something like that would indicate that morally, maybe we aren't better off than our grandparents.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess. I guess so. I guess.
I mean, just off, just giving basic statistic, our generation has more single family households. We have more single parents, and we have more mental disturbances for our children than any generation before. Um, and I want to ask all of my guests these questions because I want to figure out on a populist level what most of us think versus what we're being shown and told. Um, but just on a logical level, if they were married and getting buried together and their households were raising men and women who were productive in society, if we're not doing that now, that would mean we've had to had some sort of major social and moral decline. If we're not staying with our if we're not finding people to be with, if we're just having sex with each other, if we're not bothering to get to know one another. This is that whole value and devaluing system. So, for example, are you familiar with the term the wall?
The wall. What
Hmm?
wall?
All right. So there's a psychological term called the wall for women and for men, but it pertains for women. What the wall is women's value as we get older, women's values decrease as men's values increase. The reason for that is women, when they're born, are already born with their value. They don't have to do anything. Like, for example, I bet you when you turn like 11 or 12 years old, you started noticing men paying attention to you. Right,
Okay. Yeah.
right. So as you get older, um, you're probably gonna get more experience. You're gonna, like how you said, date people, have sex with people, travel, all of this stuff, right? So that does nothing but devalue a woman as time goes. Most men would rather have the most pure woman they can, meaning, a woman who hasn't been accessed by many men, a woman who's agreeable, and it's purity, chastity, and agreeability. Yeah, and a woman who has, like I said, hasn't been accessed by many men and is attractive. Um, so women don't have to do anything, but when they start doing these things, that's what chicks off at their value. As far as men go, men are worth nothing. When we're born, men are born worthless. Nobody cares about us until we get older and we can demonstrate to people that we're fast and that we're strong and that we're smart and that we can help your company grow or something like that, right? And then
Hmm.
in order for women to respect us, we have to have the respect of other men. Um, um, so that's why our value after time increases. By the time most men hit their 30-year marker, like they turn 30 years old, that's when they start establishing themselves. That's when they start getting noticed by women. And that just lasts throughout the time. This is where you start hearing the term silver fox.
I've never heard the term silver fox.
Oh, word. All right. So like that's
No.
like a hot granddad term. Yeah.
Oh, you mean like a zaddy, a daddy? Isn't that the term? Isn't that the more appropriate term?
Well, in the States, zaddy is anybody that's like a sugar daddy.
Oh,
So
okay.
that yeah, so that can be any age. You know what I mean? People call people zaddy after they didn't got dick down like twice.
Okay.
Um, but but yeah, so things like so I bring up that because our grandparents they stuck to a far stricter moral code than we did, which is why their society was a better one as far as morally is concerned. Um, the things we attack and ostracize about them are things that we just didn't understand. So, for
Yeah.
example, I know most of us want to party, right? Like we're all into this, like we gotta do our thing and hook up with people and experience the world, right? Um,
Some. Mm-hmm.
well, for sure. Um, but things like that, when they're distractions, partying and hooking up from a logical standpoint, just because if you do want to be somebody's wife or you do want to be somebody's husband, then would you agree that you should be worthy of your husband or your wife?
I feel like men should be worthy of their wives. That's what I feel like.
Women
Like,
shouldn't have to be worthy of their husbands?
ugh, like, I mean, I guess to some extent, but it's not as important as how worthy men should be for women. But go on.
All right, let me ask you. In a relationship, do you think it's better if a man settles for his woman or if a woman settles for her man?
Hmm, that's a tricky one. If a man settles for his woman or a woman settles for his man. It's the thing, if he settles, he'll never really truly love her and never truly respect her, you know? And if a woman settles, it's kind of the same thing, you know? I don't think anybody should settle.
Well, to give you a statistic, and most women will say that they prefer it when their man settles for them. And the reason for that is if she's settling for her dude, then she's always looking for something better.
Hmm.
She's waiting for
But
somebody
isn't
who,
he also always looking for something better?
on contrast, no, because if a man settles for his wife, for his woman, then that means that's the best he can do, and he won't leave her, and she knows that. If she's the best, if I'm the best he can get, he's not gonna leave me. So most women would much rather have their husbands settle for them, opposed to being a woman settling for her boyfriend or her husband. She knows even in herself, she knows other men have her interest, and it's not gonna last. Like for example, this is where you see a lot of new age people divorcing their husbands and stuff because they thought they wanted someone progressive and nice and kind and that would cry, right? But then after being with this person, they have a son.
Hmm.
And once that woman gives birth to her son, she realizes, "Oh shit. If I have a relationship with this dude, he's going to raise my son to be a bitch just like him."
Oh my God.
That's why you have so many women divorcing their husbands that seem like good men. You see what I'm saying?
Do you
Like,
think it's all because they cry?
no, I just mean no matter what, they don't want to raise a child in the fashion that they thought they wanted their
Mm.
husbands. Because for example, if women aren't supposed to do anything but be pretty, right? Would you be all right with your son dating a woman who does nothing for him? She doesn't cook any of his meals. She doesn't wash his laundry. She just spends all his money and is pretty. Would you want that for your son?
That is so different. I feel so attacked, but that's so different. You know,
How is that different?
that's so different. Like, and this goes back to the whole cooking issue. I never said don't cook for him. I just said don't be so quick to cook for him. You know, don't be so quick to be a wife while you're a girlfriend. You know.
All right. So like I said, so if your son is talking to this woman and he's like, it's been 5 months, mom, but I think maybe after the seventh month she'll make me something, and I just don't know. She's pretty, that's all she is to me is pretty. Is that
I'm
something
pretty,
you'd
I'm
want?
pretty, I'm pretty sure after 5 months she'll cook for him.
Not
Yeah.
according to you. That's being a pick me in. That's being a pick me. So you want to pick me for your son, but you don't want, but you want but you
I ain't
want a
trying to be
decent
a
wife.
pick me, but like, like whatever makes him happy.
Well, I logically, most men want a woman who's gonna cook. Most men want a woman who's gonna clean and be happy about it because people aren't thinking, especially in our generation, we don't think long term. We're all out here just rolling the dice and having fun. So I bring up situations like that because these women are leaving their husbands because now they're in a serious situation. I have a son now, and this son will be a man. Now, I don't want my son to be a crying man. I don't want my son to, run around with women like me. Do you see what I'm saying? So they end up
Hmm.
leaving their dude in order to hopefully find another man who can instill better lessons in their children. And that's why there's so many single moms right now. I mean, they're all everybody's hooking up. Um, yeah, yeah. So like something like that. That's why most men say. That's why most women would rather have their men settle for them.
I mean, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. But like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, Seth. I hear what you're saying. Let me just say, I hear what you're saying. But yeah.
Right. So I mean, like I think we as a generation don't consider the ramifications of our actions. That's all. So um, yeah, I would say that our grandparents definitely they seem happier even because they had a moral code, and everything seems fun. But just because something is fun doesn't mean we should do it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So do you remember like 2000 like 6 Justin Timberlake music era?
Yeah.
Do you remember back when it,
The
it,
best
it
era
was
of music. But go on.
right? But do you remember back when it was difficult to have sex with a girl? Remember that? Like you had to actually be talking to a chick and you had to actually like her and show her that she was worth giving her body to you?
I'm pretty sure at that time, people were, still doing long distance dating, really getting to know each other for months on end before actually seeing each other.
Right.
Yeah. Hmm.
Right. Right. So all of that is because of a moral standard that was built for everyone. Meaning like, you even that, having a long distance relationship, stuff like that mattered because you valued the person on the other end. You weren't just trying to fuck them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you weren't
And then
just trying to fuck them.
it's gonna keep going. Okay.
But you know what I mean? Like that's why those connections matter and people had authentic connections because we all were on a base agreement on a moral system. Meaning when you look at somebody, you don't see somebody that's just trying to use you or abuse you. You don't know what you see until you talk to them, right?
Yeah.
But now we've all been programmed to, have fun and it's all about only what we think. Now when we look at another person, we see something material. What can you do for me? Can I have sex with you? Do you see what I'm saying? We're not
Yeah.
I'm not we're not even interested in remembering names.
Yeah.
And something like that was unheard of in our grandparents' days. So, with our behavior and the ramifications of our behaviors, meaning like how things are, do you think do you think that is because do you think that has anything to do with well I would actually have to ask you this question. Do you think that since our grandparents era there's been a social and moral decline, or do you think it's gone up?
You know, it you know what the thing is? At the end of the day, you have to think about that era was so different because yes, sure, cool. They didn't have the internet. We had the internet. We're the in-betweeners. We're the
Mm-hmm.
in-betweeners. And we were exposed to a lot. We were exposed to a
Yes.
whole lot, and the shit that we're seeing on television right now, is literally the thing that's appropriating everything that you're saying right now. So even if you're born good and maybe you had these morals when you were born, or maybe by 10 someone made sure that you don't watch TV and you're fine. The moment you start watching TV, like, it becomes your life. That's going to be who you are. You know what I mean? That's
So
the
people
issue.
are
The issue
programmed
here,
no matter
the
what.
issue here is what's on television. The issue here is what you can find online. The issue here is what we're being fed.
So would you say that, is there any choice at all on behalf of the person doing those things?
That, you know what, you can. There's a choice. There's a choice, but
So someone diving into
you've
those
already been
things,
manipulated by the system to kind of just lean towards this
will
hassle
anyone,
life.
well, let's just go on a base level, right? If somebody starts off clean slate, they haven't been manipulated yet, right? They would have to expose themselves to television in order to become that way, right? And then they would have to prolong expose themselves to television in order to submerge themselves into that mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
At any point, was there a choice made?
The choice was to watch the television.
Right. And
Yeah.
then was there another choice made after that?
The choice is going to be made after that, because if you decide that all your morals that you had before watching all these programs are out the window, then you're choosing to actively become a different person.
Right. So it's all a choice. It doesn't matter what we have on our TVs or what we see in theaters. How we behave is up to us, always. Like for example, I doubt that a school-going 16-year-old girl watches a music video and then goes, "Oh, I gotta twerk now. I can't help it. I just have to twerk and shake my ass for all of these dudes." I don't think that happens very often.
That's literally what they do, though. Like, that's literally what they do. Have you not seen these kids on TikTok? Like, as long as someone famous is doing it, they'll do it. You know?
Right, but that would still be exposing themselves to TikTok, right? And especially if we're talking about children, then that means no matter what, would you say that if a child has an issue, then ultimately it has to be the problem of the parent?
I mean, a huge part of it would be the problem of the parent. A huge,
Right.
huge part of it. Yeah.
Right. So, would a child have access to TikTok if their parent didn't want them to?
No, because how would they even
Right.
have a phone unless the parent bought them a phone? You know?
Right. Right. So, the fact that they're on TikTok already is a series of choices that led to them being on TikTok.
Hmm.
Right. So if they didn't, and more than likely, I doubt that parents with a strong moral system would allow their children to do stuff like twerk on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that would go back to what I'm saying about our modern day hookup and how we see things. So I'm gonna assume that if a 16-year-old is twerking on TikTok, then that means their parents are
Allowed
something
it.
like that. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
they're into
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
exactly.
So that means that people who are doing this stuff are breeding children who are going to become social issues.
I mean, the problem right now is, parents right now are willing to do anything. Like, I think the issue is people care more about money than anything in this era. Because parents are willing to go as far as that they get children to work for millions of views, because that's a paycheck. You know what I mean? That's a
Mm-hmm.
paycheck. The more radical the situation, like, the more money you're gonna make from it. You know, and that's the thing.
Yeah,
We don't have the same parents that we had growing up.
absolutely.
Children are being raised by really confused people.
Right, right. Um, and I agree. I agree. Because if children are seeing things a certain way, then that means they had to have been given that way by somebody. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It doesn't. So either you're being as a child, either you're being taught by your parents or you're being taught by the TV, right? More than likely.
Yeah.
Um, Ultimately, it all comes down to a choice, right? Like you have to let your child do that stuff. If we were and now and like how you said, this would have never happened in our grandparents' day. They didn't play none of that shit at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
somebody did a jig a little too hard and swung their hips to the side. Our grandparents was like, take that off TV. You know what I mean? Like, so they had a far stronger moral system than we do. They saw the long-term effects to stuff. Like, for example, they didn't let us eat all the candy we wanted because they knew it would damage our teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't think like that. For us, it was like candy, it tastes good, I'm having fun. You
Yeah.
know, why are you taking our candy away, Mom? Give me my fucking candy back. You know what I mean? It's like you want it and you think it's what's best for you, but you don't know. We're not thinking about what's best for us. You know what I mean? So, That's why I asked you about this party culture and stuff, because people who are doing this stuff, they are now the present day partier is tomorrow's single parent.
You think so?
Absolutely. Because no matter
Every
what,
mhm.
oh
Every
yeah,
present day partier.
absolutely. Because no matter what, unless unless you're messing with a dude who has a vasectomy, and most men don't,
You
you see what I'm saying? You're
could be on
somebody's.
birth control. You could be on the pill. You could have some really airlock birth control. I mean, of course, it's only going to be 97% or 99%. But like some people really got it on lock. Some people are
Until they
managing.
slip and they be like, I can't believe how could this happen? How many times have you heard that? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a numbers game. It's a numbers game. It doesn't matter if 99% of the time, if I shoot at a building, you know what I mean? If I shoot at this building 99% of the time, that means eventually I'm going to shoot it. There's a percent, right?
Yeah.
So if you're out here partying and you're busting nuts and everything, you're going to get somebody pregnant eventually.
That's true. That's true.
Now, everybody wants to point fingers at whose fault it is that somebody got pregnant. Like, for example, let's see your opinion on it. Two people are single, they're having a good time, they mess around, woman's pregnant now. Whose fault is it?
Both of their fault.
I agree. Logic would agree as well. I agree. So I get people who want to blame other people. I've had people on my show who will say it's the woman's fault. I had people on my show say it's the man's fault.
Yeah.
Logic would say it's both people's fault, right?
It takes both people to get fucking pregnant.
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it blows my mind when people want to blame somebody. Like y'all both lay down and you're equals.
You knew what would
Just like
happen if we have sex without protection. Like 1+1 is always going to be 2.
yeah, even if you do have protection, things happen. You know what I mean? And that's what
Things happen.
partiers are thinking, like, things happen. If I get pregnant, it's not a big deal. And that's the problem now. I mean, like how you said, like people, like you were saying, your friends are like, yeah, I was wild and I made mistakes. But if you made a mistake, do you want the truth to be when you look at your child to say, hey, son or daughter, you are a mistake. If I made better choices, you wouldn't be here.
Of course not. Of course not. Nobody wants to hear that they were a mistake.
Right. And it's not even
That's
like,
detrimental to their mental health.
right. Which is why we have
Yeah.
so many people out here wilding right now, because they're realizing that they're a product of a mistake. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not like the mistakes of our grandparents. When our grandparents had mistakes, it was like, I didn't got my wife pregnant.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? It's not like, some dude that I met at the bar, I let him bang me and now I'm carrying his spawn. Like, and for just logically, I would say, I would ask you this as well, but logically, I would say that type of activity isn't healthy for either party. Would you agree or disagree?
It's not healthy. It really isn't. It really isn't for both parties.
Right. Yeah. I think. Would you think? Would you say that there's a lack of taking responsibility in our society, especially like for our generation?
Nobody wants to be held accountable. Nobody takes accountability. That's the
Right.
problem.
Right. So nobody wants to be responsible for anything that they do themselves, even. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
They always want to blame someone else.
Right.
I think generation is just too entitled.
I mean, like, we
They
got a lot of issues,
We
man.
got a whole lot of issues, like a
I mean,
whole lot of issues. Like
yeah. I mean,
It's crazy.
Think about the things we even discuss now. I mean, the things we even discuss out loud weren't even things that were talked about back then, because it's like you'd have to be mentally insane in order to think something like that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Our parents didn't think, they didn't have any of these issues that we have, and we have. There's clearly a mental health crisis because so many people are trying to pick at any little thing, and everything is somebody else's fault. You got men targeting women, and you got women targeting men, and I just feel like logically there has to be something going on there. You know what I mean? Like why don't we take accountability? And I get it. Like I do agree with you how you said like these TVs program us, and it's true they do. I mean they're literally called programs, television programs. You know what I mean? Like our grandparents aren't being old when they say that. You know what I
I
mean?
want to ask you something. We're gonna go on a bit off topic, but it has because we're talking about programming. I want to ask. Let me be the host of this show. I want to ask, what's your take on this whole LGBTQ plus?
Well, on this show, I could only answer that logically. Remember, I never come with my perspective at all. So, how would you word a question?
Okay, well, obviously you don't have to have a problem with it. You don't have to like it or anything like that. But do you think that it's okay? Because I know it's getting a lot of backlash with people for, Netflix and a lot of big streaming companies introducing shows with content with,
Right.
people of this community. They're doing as much as like putting it on like little kids shows. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like would you say that parents are okay to be outraged by it? Like okay
Absolutely.
to be
Logically,
upset
yeah.
about it?
Absolutely. Logically. On every level, logically and morally. Um,
And don't you think that what they're doing is trying to program little kids into leaning towards that kind of lifestyle?
Absolutely. Logically, there's no other way.
Mm-hmm.
For because, for example, something like bringing up anything sexual is no one's business.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly not for a child. For what other reason would you introduce a sexual topic for a child unless you were trying to have sex with them?
Exactly.
So there's no way to morally be all right with something like that, or even logically. So yeah, parents have the right to refuse and fight all they want and complain. They should. Um, children have no logically. Children have no connotation of what's right and wrong all the way. I mean, think about it. Like how you saw we just talked about. Children eating candy. A child will eat cake for breakfast every day if he can. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean do it. So something like trying to program these children is because logically it would be because homosexuals are not accepted in society, any
And
society.
naturally, children are not going to even see homosexual people until they actually become like maybe like way after teenagehood, like maybe in their late years of teenagers. Because like normally, what happens is even if you are homosexual, chances are you're gonna go through your whole life in school hiding the fact that you're homosexual, which means you're never gonna come out until maybe after high school, maybe like the end of high school and stuff like that. So there's no way that straight people would be exposed to homosexuality, you know?
Right. Well,
That's why they're feeding it down our throats and then putting it on the TV and then putting it in the movies and then putting it in the TV shows so that kids can have access to it when they're really young.
yeah, because then they'll be curious about it. Their
Hmm.
hope is that they're hoping
But if you
that
go your
the
whole life
children.
being straight, there's no way you're just gonna automatically switch because oh, at 20 years old, I saw a movie with the gay person in it.
Well, there's a lot more that goes into that. Like for example, with homosexuals now, logically, there is a okay. There's what I call a natural homosexual. And what a natural homosexual is do you remember when we were younger? Homosexuals have always existed, but you would never know who they are because they weren't telling you.
Hmm.
It was nobody's business. They didn't want you to know what they were into.
I mean,
I
in
mean,
my country, I growing up in my country, I hadn't met a single homosexual person. I only actually met a homosexual person like way after high school.
right, because it's nobody's business. You would never know.
You would
I'm
never
very,
know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very sure they were walking around, but they didn't want people in their business because they were normal people, just like everybody else. Nobody
Mhm.
wants everybody in their business, not even
Mhm.
homosexuals, normal ones.
Mhm.
Most people now are the product of sexual traumatization of some form. So I haven't met, and this is like just logically, every single homosexual that I've met and had in-depth conversations with, the issue that they all have in common is that during their adolescence, they were either raped or sexually molested. And that led them down this path of being a homosexual. So, for example, I talked to a man who told me when he was 15 years old, he was raped by a cop. A male cop raped him. And he said he told people, and nobody believed him. He told his mother didn't believe him. He told his father didn't believe him. He told kids at the school, and nobody believed him.
Mhm.
So the cop shows up and rapes him like again and again, right? So eventually, he just told himself, well, maybe I'm a girl because that way it's easier
Maybe
for me.
what?
He started telling himself, maybe I'm a girl because it's easier to tell myself I'm a homosexual that had a bad sexual experience versus being a man who was raped by another man. One is an easier pill to swallow. Do you see what I'm saying? And they want to go with that easier pill. So then in order to cope with that, because if that's true, like, all right, well, I'm not really a man that was raped. I'm a homosexual that he took advantage of. Okay, that's easier to deal with. Now I have to stick with that. In order for me to be all right in my mind, I can't go against that. So I got to stick with that. And how do I cope with that? Well, I dive further into it. And then most homosexuals, especially the ones that are all rainbowy and all that stuff, those are the ones who are the most depressed. Any homosexual or any transsexual, anybody like that you see waving flags and all this other stuff, they're trying so hard to make it all right for themselves. Nobody does that. Think about us. Anyone who's been straight throughout all of time, nobody needs to wave love flags and